Lucy. Give me a wave if you've been in a technique forum before. We've had them on previous projects, but this is the first one. Kathy has, Joanne has, and Rosemary has. Hello, Rosemary. Ah, yes, Foxy's in it. Foxy's here.
Vad är det? Det vet vi inte.
Jo, det ska... Där, 513. Sorry.
Lovely. All right. So if you've not been in a vocal technique session with us before, they are the times where we take questions from you and we address some of the key principles of vocal technique that people are asking about and that maybe you've been wondering about your entire life. There's no such thing as a stupid question. It's absolutely a free-for-all, and you're all very welcome to ask questions. We will be allowing you to put your own questions in the chat later on, but we have had people who've submitted their questions in advance, so we want to make sure that those people are prioritised. So the way that we're going to do this is Jamie and I are going to have a quick go through of why we do a warm-up like we do, because you'll have noticed if you've been in sessions with us in the past that a warm-up tends to have the same structure, and there's a reason behind it, and we'd love to really talk you through that process so that when you come to having to warm yourself up in the future, you know the sort of structure to follow. That means you're doing everything in a vocally healthy way. And then we're going to go to the questions we've had submitted by members over the last week, and we're going to group those into sections and themes so that we're dealing with the same kind of questions at the same time. And after we've done that, we're then going to open up the floor to you lovely folk, and you can put any questions that haven't been answered into the chat, and we will get through as many of them as we can. Sound like a plan, Jamie?
It certainly does. So, hello everybody. I'm here as well. Let's both get on the spotlight so we don't lose each other, Tori. Welcome everyone on YouTube. I've just popped over to the chat to say hello to you all, but that's affectionately become known as the patio. Why? My sound cut out, so I had to ask the team after the last session why that was. It's like sitting outside on the patio with a nice drink, listening to those of us in the Zoom room. So you are very welcome. I have the chat open. I will be scrolling through it to look at your questions as well. Since you are already on YouTube, I might suggest one little thing that I can't suggest to those of you in Zoom. There's a little button. It's red and it says the word subscribe on it. If you do feel like clicking that button, and there's a little bell next to it that will ping you whenever we release a video, which might be helpful when we release our project videos, go ahead and click those. I think without further ado, shall we crack on? Tori, shall we start with a bit of a warm-up?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a behind the scenes version of a warm-up. So rather than doing a warm-up like we do in a rehearsal, we're going to do it more like an instruction manual. So it's not going to be a proper vocal warm-up, but it is going to talk you through exactly what goes on in that process. I'm kicking off, aren't I?
I believe you are.
Great. And if I go crunchy, let me know, Jamie. So the rough overview for a warm-up is we do a focus exercise to start with. You can't really learn unless you have really focused your mind. We then move on to warming up the body, so physical. Then we do breath work, because what we're doing is we're building up a foundation. You start with focusing your mind, and then you zone in gradually on the voice. You can't do breath without body, because what controls your breath? Your body. You can't do voice work without breath, because how do you manage the voice? It's the breath. So we have this pyramid of singing technique, and it starts with focusing the mind, moves on to the body, moves on to the breath, moves on to the voice. Then the final section, which we like to call gymnastics, which is anything else which you can do to develop your practice once you have got all of the basics in place. So I'm going to start with an example of a focus exercise. And it's simply called points of focus. I would like everybody to look at the top left corner of their Zoom screen. First of all, we're just going to set up our posture, so make sure you're sitting up nice and straight, or whatever's comfortable for you. And I'd like you to look at the top left corner of your Zoom screen. Top right corner, bottom left, bottom right. Nice. Let's expand that out. I want you to look at the top left corner of whatever room you're in. Top left. Go. This time I want you to be really quick, really snappy, okay? I'm going to carry on looking at the screen so that I can see everybody's heads moving in glorious synchronicity. Top left. Top right. Top left. Top right. Top left. Top right. You look like Pavlov's dogs. And bottom left. Top right. Bottom left. Top right. It's a head version of night fever, night fever. And now I'm going to label them red, yellow, green, blue. So top right is red. Red. Ooh, brains are thinking now. Top right is red. Red. Top left is yellow. Red. Yellow. Red. Yellow. Green. That'll be bottom right. Yellow. Etc, etc, etc. So you can build this up and just have some fun with it, but it gets you really thinking. Jamie.
Great. So next we move on. Once we've got our focus, and you can do this using the exercise Tori's just done, you can do this in a number of different ways. We move to some physical stuff. We are athletes. We may not feel like athletes, but we are. Singing is a full body activity. So you're welcome to join me standing up. Now, there's two things we need to think of. A certain amount of stretching to loosen ourselves up just a little bit, but also releasing unnecessary tension. So those are our two goals. Let's start with some stretching. Reach up as high as you possibly can. I'm going to do this very quickly. This won't be a full stretch. Reaching over to one side. Now, this is now stretching all of these muscles down our side. I'll come to these in a second, why they matter for support. And to the other side. Good. And lean forwards. I would usually at this point make a joke about worshipping me. Lean backwards. Good. And we would usually do that a couple of times. But what we've already released is these muscles here. I forgot what these are called. My brain's gone completely blank. But this are support. I'll come to this a little bit later in the vocal warm-up, but our support is hugely important. It's a word that we get shouted at a lot by our directors, but most of us have no idea what we're talking about. It is these muscles here, our lower abdominals into the belt around our back. This is our support. It's like the engine of a car. We don't want it to be working unnecessarily, but we do want it to be working efficiently in order to be making the absolute best sound we can. So reaching up one last time. And this time, you're going to fold forwards, fold at the waist until you are sort of leaning down almost as if you're trying to touch your toes. If you can't keep your legs straight, don't worry. Your legs should be nice and relaxed. Leaning forward. So now we are releasing tension. Notice if your shoulders are tense. Notice if your legs are tense. Notice how you're standing. Any unnecessary tension in the body. What do I mean by unnecessary? Anything that feels like, oh, if I gave that a bit of a massage, or if I just worked out a bit of tension there, that would feel better. That's what I mean. Tension that isn't required. Of course, we need a bit of tension to standing up. So to a count of 6 this time, I'd usually do it to 10. We're going to come up to a standing position, and the head is going to be the last thing. To a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. The head is the last thing there. Now let's release the tension in the neck. Head to one side. I should have said, because I've just seen a comment, if any of these are uncomfortable, change them as you need. Head to the other side. This is stretching. Just stretching this out. If you'd like, put your hand on your head just to feel that stretch a little bit more. If that's a bit too intense, that's fine. Change all of these exercises as much as you need to. Let's just go back to the other side to even up that stretch, because I overstretched that. Good. Chin to your chest, stretching the back of the neck. Plenty of us do this on our phones anyway, so let's even it up, keeping your jaw loose, looking up. Lovely. Good. Give your left arm a shake. Right arm a shake. Left leg a shake. Right leg a shake. Just releasing things a little bit. Shoulders up, breathing in. We're going to come to the breath in a minute. As you release everything, breathe out. Breathe in. Tense every muscle in your body. Breathe out. One more time. Squeeze everything until you regret coming to this session. Go. Squeeze, really, really squeeze. Squeeze your back, squeeze your fingers, squeeze your hands, squeeze your eyes, squeeze your bottom, squeeze your knees, squeeze your legs, squeeze your fingers, and breathe out, relax. That is going to release some tension. We've started on a bit of breath work, at which point I hand over to Tori for some breath.
So you've set up your body, you use your body to control the breath. Notice we haven't even got to the voice yet. There's so much you have to set up to set yourself up to succeed. So breath work, very simply, you've got we've talked about SOVTs, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. It's a very fancy word. We've talked about it in past projects. Basically, it's anything that sounds like this. Sh, s, yeah, anything where you are blocking. Also, you notice I got a little bit of voice there, but normally I'm not using any voice in these. They are just breath exercises where I'm obstructing the sound with something. Could even be with my hand. One of the exercises we've done previously is I am occluding, blocking my vocal tract. Other than that, it's just breath and so anything that is getting the breath flowing but is not using voice. It's funny that it's sometimes difficult to make that distinction. If I'm going, my voice is on. You can hear that ooh coming in the background. If I'm going, my voice is off. So get used to doing breath exercises before you do voice exercises. Examples of these would be when we do breathing out 6 into 6, when we do doggy panting, or when we do shh, 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 or it's telling somebody to shut up, shh, 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 though of course we're never so rude. Anything like that where you're using your breath and not your voice is the next step in warming up. You're reminding all of the muscles that you've just warmed up physically to release and to let the air in nice and in a nice relaxed way. And that reminds your body how it uses the breath for healthy singing. Okay. And after you've done all of that, focus, physical, breath, you then get on to vocal stuff.
Good. Is that coming to me?
Oh, yeah.
Good. So I'm going to take that. We've had the option of doing little staccato things like that, and we're going to apply it to the voice. This will be useful later. I'll reference back to this rather than spending lots of time on it. We're going to throw lots of things at you today, but let's do a staccato version first. I'm going to remain seated, and we're just going to do to a scale. Here's a C, there's a middle C, and we're going to go E, 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 E. Simple as that. That's it. This is going to help with my staccato, but rather than feeling tension here, as if I'm singing from here, of course that's where the noise is being made, I should feel my lower support muscles working. Let's try it once. Off we go. E, 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 E. Now, we can do that across our entire range. Keep it within our most comfortable range. We're not getting into extreme highs. We're not getting into extreme lows. This is still warming up, but this is a nice little way to get the voice going. It's not a melodic line yet. We're not getting into full vocalizing, but it's just enough to give a bit of a tickle. There's 2 things to watch out for in this exercise, and it's the reason it's my absolute favorite, even though it's probably the simplest thing we could be doing. It is, if you are introducing any unnecessary tension, you will feel it, and you will notice it here. You will feel it first. Second, you will hear it. As you go up in your range or even down in your range, you will find certain areas of your voice are more effective or less effective. Up here, I have to compensate in different ways, and I can feel my voice doing things. So you can notice, of course, the goal is that throughout your entire range, your voice feels consistent.
I look forward to that.
Rather than sounding like your voice sounds like one voice here and a different voice here and a completely different voice here, which I know we've all had that. So applying that's my absolute favorite. Then we can get on to more legato based vocalizing, which sort of leads us to our extra / gymnastics thing. Now, I'd like to say, before Tori goes on to a vocalized exercise, I'd like to say spend the absolute bulk of your time in a warm-up. And by that, I mean I know I do, Tori. I don't know how long you warm up before a gig. I warm up for 45 minutes to an hour before a gig. That is completely an adequate amount of time for me to make sure I have my full range nice and warmed up. And I don't need to be singing anything extreme until the last maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Spend the bulk of your time on the physical, the breath, breathing in for amount of time, breathing out on a shh, on those semi-occluded sounds. Really invest in that time, and it's going to make the singing later much, much easier. Tori, let's do some singing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely, Jamie. If you think about an athlete, they don't warm up for a 100-meter sprint by doing a 75-meter sprint. They warm up by doing stretches and flexibility exercises and light jogging. And it's exactly the same. You are an athlete. You are doing something physical, and so that is where you spend your warm-up time. Once we get to the end and you really want to do this, sort of start doing your wider range exercises. Maybe this might be the time when your conductor will do some choir training with you, but basically you are no longer in a warm-up at this point, because you're singing, you're doing any kind of vocalizing exercises. Okay, so that's your rundown of a warm-up. And you notice that I've not actually, Jamie said I'd take you through a singing exercise, but you all know what a full singing warm-up sounds like. We want to make sure we're focusing on the technique here rather than actually doing the warm-up exercises. But it's worth bearing in mind at this stage that if any of your questions involved stamina, reaching high notes, developing range, please do one of these kind of warm-ups before you start singing, for every time you sing for a month, and see if it makes a difference. Because what this is doing is it's setting you up with physiologically sound foundations for your singing. Don't be the athlete who tries to warm up for a 100-meter sprint by doing a 100-meter sprint. Okay? So there is our sort of warm-up technique in a bag. Shall we crack on with some of the questions, Jamie?
Let's do it. Now, we've split these into 6. I just needed to count them then. 6 little sections. Now, this was from the questions we got from the form, those of you when you signed up. So those of you on the YouTube patio, you may not have seen this or submitted a form through this if you didn't sign up via that method. But I'd like to start with sustaining long notes. Now, this is particularly relevant to Locus Estate, isn't it? And I'm sure lots of us have had trouble with this. Now, the first thing, and this is the thing that we will talk about in every single rehearsal, is the breath. My personal belief with singing is that absolutely everything in singing can be traced back to how you breathe. If you can sort your breathing out, it's going to sort out so many things. And if you spend 80% of that warm-up that we just talked about, 80% of that 45 minutes on your breath and making sure your breath and your support, your lower abdominal muscles are working well and supporting you, that's going to help the most. We hear so often, breathe from your diaphragm. And the reason that both Tori and I will flinch when we hear that is because you can't really breathe from your diaphragm. Of course it's involved, but your diaphragm is just a sheet of muscle. It will move, but don't try and control it. Don't try and do weird things with your diaphragm. But let's look at how we can sing legato, and I'm going to start with a bad version. I would like all of you to sing a note that is going to last for 20 seconds. Do the worst version of that you possibly can. Just get to the end of 20 seconds. Go. I'm not going to do it for a full 20 seconds, but you get the idea. Notice what you might have done. I noticed exactly what I did. I took a breath way larger than I needed, and I gasped. Meant I put in unnecessary tension here, and I could feel it in my throat. That was the first thing. I can fix that by breathing well, and we'll come to that a little bit later, I'm sure. The second thing I did, I restricted the amount of air my voice was using on that note. And that does two things. I'm using tension here to make that sound. Try and copy that sound if you will. It's not particularly exciting to listen to. It sounds more like a fly has just come into my room and is buzzing around my microphone. But it will also not give you the best and most resonant sound. It won't be very open, and it won't be particularly helpful for your long legato notes, for your sustained notes. I beg your pardon. Tori will do legato in a second. What we're looking for is that nice open breath. And I always talk about water wheels. I talk about the 5 pound breath, as if you found 5 pounds on the floor. I won't go over this one too much today because we talk about it all the time. But imagine for a moment that you've got a chemistry set, one of those big pipettes, tiny little tube with a tap at the bottom. And you fill it up, you turn the tap and it empties. This is the opposite of how the breath should feel. We talk a lot about how the breath should feel and how things feel in singing. If you fill this up with water, it gets to the top, then you have to empty it out. Whereas the breath should feel like a water wheel. The water is always on the move. It never stops. Never stops. So rather than squeezing to try and get through these long notes, we should feel like the breath is always moving, I beg your pardon. We can increase our ability to do that by practicing those warm-ups, but breathing into a count of 4, breathing out to a count of 6 on a shh sound is going to help slowly increase those numbers. I think I've done it to into 20, out to 40 before. That wasn't the most comfortable exercise I've ever done, but try it. Give it a go. See how far you can push your voice. But the bad version is squeezing here in order to limit the air you're using and breathing more than you need because you feel you need to sing for a long time. Tori, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, but it leads me really nicely on to talking about legato, because if you're breathing and you're using the breath well, I've had a singing teacher describe it as a cushion of air, that you support your singing on a cushion of air, like it's sort of a glorious hovercraft. But if your cushion of air is lacking in any way, that's when you start getting the bumps. That's when you start hitting the water, and your legato is going to suffer. Now, if you haven't heard the word legato before, it is a Italian term, simply means smooth. So smooth singing. Now, people have got very specific about legato. And the more expert you get as a singer, it's like it's a never-ending pit of learning. Is legato. You can understand it at a very simple level, and then as you start learning, it gets more and more complicated, and you sort of go, oh my god, I'm so glad that I didn't think it was this complicated to start with. Let's just think of it as smooth singing. So first of all, like usual, we come all the way back to breath. And if you can do the passage to a v or a zh or a z, then you start training your body to use the breath in an even way. I don't know if anybody's ever got to the end of a breath and found that it's so much harder to keep the singing smooth. It's so much better to take a little top-up breath and then continue on that cushion of air because you've got plenty in the tank. So that would be my top tip for legato. The second bit is about the vowels that you sing. So if I'm singing, for example, let's see, it's la da dee dum. Am I in the right key? Who knows? Oh, a little bit flat today, never mind. La così de o fa. Okay, I've got lots of different vowels that I'm trying to string together to make a smooth phrase. If I'm splaying my mouth all over the place, it is a sentence I've never said before, it's going to sound very uneven, very lumpy. La così de o fa. Okay? It's not good. So if I'm matching the vowels and I'm putting them together and I'm adding it to that feeling of a cushion of air, I've got a better chance of creating a smooth sound. So la così de. And you can see that my mouth is not being overly distorted, but at the same time I'm not closing everything down to stop the sound coming out. I'm just being I'm transitioning smoothly between the vowels, and that helps the sound to sound smoother as well. So 2 things I would say for legato singing. First one is getting the breath even. You're not going to be able to sing legato if you're right at the end of a breath, or at least maybe you can if you're super, super skilled, but it's much easier to just take a little top up and carry on. And the second one is thinking about your vowels and making sure that you're joining your vowels together smoothly as you go from one to the other. It's my whistle-stop tour of legato.
We talk a lot, I mentioned earlier, we talk a lot about feelings in singing. I think this is probably a good point to talk about hyper-awareness. Everything in singing, you can observe how it feels. If you're singing legato in the absolute top of your register, it's going to feel a certain way that singing staccato in your low register will feel different. Paying attention to all of these things, particularly and comparing them to a good day or a bad day, whatever that means for your voice, can be really, really helpful. Clock in and say, well, today I know that I'm feeling really tense because I've sat at my desk staring down at Zoom like this all day and I feel tense. How does this manifest in my voice? What does it feel like to sing like this? I didn't do this bit of my warm-up. What does this feel like? What am I noticing? Hyper-awareness. It is super, super helpful. It will make you so much more aware of your voice. Obviously, that was completely unnecessary tautology there. An unnecessary tautology, my favourite way to say it. But the more you are aware of how everything feels, not just this bit, but your soft palate, your cheeks, your shoulders, your entire body, notice how it feels to sing. It will really, really help. Vibrato, we've got next on our list, Tori.
Oh, vibrato.
Now, the question I saw for this was, how do I control or stop my vibrato? Now, that is a completely legitimate question. It is a completely legitimate question. However, it is not one that we should be thinking of as our default method of singing. Good singing will create vibrato. Vibrato is a symptom of good, released, relaxed singing. If I take a scale, and I just sing it in a nice, relaxed way, that is going to have a certain amount of vibrato in it. Vibrato is the result of when you change pitch, your muscles are controlling your vocal folds, either how tight or loose they are being allowed to vibrate. The muscles that are controlling that are obviously controlled by your nerves. The rate at which your nerves fire, the rate at which they keep delivering that info to stay in that one place, the rate at which your nerves fire is your rate of vibrato, because they're effectively turning on and off really, really quickly in order to hold your vocal folds in place. That gives the voice vibrato. Good luck controlling your nerves. It's quite hard. Obviously, practice is going to help, but don't try and override your body, because you'll lose most of the time, I would say. But vibrato is a symptom of good, relaxed, released singing. However, just like a good painter will use a variety of shades and colours to convey what they want, as singers we can do the same. So we can either increase or decrease the vibrato as a type of colour when we want it. So if I was singing a really quiet, relaxed piece of music, but I wanted this super still sound, I can go from, I've just had Tori's helping me out with a score marking. Bar 17, for example, is marked non-vibrato. I don't know what's in bar 17, but let's just say it's locus iste. Just that phrase, which we all know by now. I can insert a very small amount of tension, to minimize that vibrato. Locus iste. It's hard, and it is using tension to reduce my vibrato. I did a dissertation on vibrato, and it gets really in-depth and really, really cool when you tell choirs to blend. They all do certain things, and it's really interesting what we all interpret the word blend to mean. But blend, good choral blend, is not the lack of vibrato. No matter how many times directors might say it, that is wrong. It is a misconception. Do not think of vibrato, I beg your pardon, as a bad thing. It is a colour to be used or not. Now we can increase the vibrato. All I'm doing is I'm basically wobbling my larynx in order to create it. It's not a sound I use particularly often, except in slightly silly occasions. But it is a colour that we might want to use. Similarly, the plain sound, let's call it, is a colour that we can use. Please don't think of vibrato as a good or a bad thing. It is a result of good singing. I think that's probably enough on that. I don't want to labour the point too much.
Yeah, I agree. So I just want to quickly just summarise something that you said just before you talked about blend, which I think is the nub of this question. Vibrato is naturally healthy. When Jamie was demonstrating that non-vibrato sound that Gareth's asking for at bar 17, he said he inserted a little bit of tension. It's basically just that is him using a vocal colour to do something that it wouldn't be healthy if you sang like that the whole time, but for the sake of a colour, it's fine for you to do that. Like if somebody wants to go, ah! I'm basically going, Chloe! That kind of woo, woo. Essentially all of those silly sounds and me wobbling my larynx around, I can use that as a colour for an effect if I want to give Jamie a shock and I go, woo! I'm just using a different colour, a little different vocal colour. Same thing if I go la 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 in order to give Jamie a shock, I am doing a different vocal colour. If I sang like that all the time, my voice would probably get very tired at either end of the spectrum. But it's fine to use those different colours as effects, for example, at bar 17.
Seen a couple of questions both in YouTube and in the private chat here about if I have really wide vibrato, is that a good thing or a bad thing then? Everybody's vibrato is different. In the same way that we all have different fingerprints, everybody's vibrato is going to differ slightly. We can increase the width. We tend to refer to it as wide or narrow vibrato. That's me trying to do narrow, even though I don't have a very narrow vibrato. Or could be the sort of the typical big beefy alto vibrato sometimes that you hear. It's neither a good nor a bad thing. It is a color and it is a result of free singing. And if you try and color your voice in a way that it's not trying to do naturally, that's where we get into vocal difficulties and potentially start hurting our voice if we try and do that all the time. Tori makes a really good point.
Like David was saying about everybody having their own different vibrato, everybody else also has their own different range. Now your range is going to change over your life. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Your range is going to change over your life. If you are a lower voice, tenor or bass, your range is going to change enormously over your life because you sing as a boy treble and then your voice will change through puberty and suddenly you have a whole different range to contend with. That is normal and it's part of the beauty of singing. If you're an upper voice, your range is going to change as all sorts of things happen. You know, people's ranges can change when they are pregnant, when they get older, when they put on weight, when they lose weight. It's because your instrument is a living thing. It is influenced by the body that it's in. So the first thing I want to do is just give a little bit of vindication to people, because singing is not about how big your range is. You are not a better singer if you've got a bigger range, because if you sound like a wet paper bag over the extent of your 3-octave range, nobody is going to want to listen to you. So please, could everybody, if you feel like you really want to expand your range so that you can say, I have a 3-octave range, I would like you now to take that desire in your hand and give it a little kiss and just let it go. Because it doesn't impact on you as a singer. Focus on being beautiful, not being big. You know, we're not in the world of, I don't know, some kind of, I'm going off on one now, but, you know, what are those monkeys who it's all about how big they can blow up their fur? You want to be a beautiful little weaver bird and not a massive monkey. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that. So that's the first thing I wanted to say about range. However, the range questions come into focus when you're having trouble moving over an area of your voice which you need. You know, if it's in a sort of, maybe if it's over a passaggio or something like that, or you want to build up a range which is kind of within the scope of what you're regularly being asked to sing. Now, lots of reasons that you can't hit certain notes normally come back to tension and breath. So if you have done the style of warm-up that we did at the beginning of this session, you will be setting up tension-free singing with good breath flow. So you might find that you iron out some of the problems at that point. Okay. Once you get past that, the siren is your friend. So a siren is basically an NG hum, or an sound, which you slide up and down without glitching or stalling on any note. And it's almost like kneading bread or rolling out pizza dough. You don't try and get to the big pizza size straight away. You roll it out a little bit. And if you roll too far too fast, your pizza dough is going to break. You're going to put too much pressure on it. You've got to roll it all back again and start again. Okay? So it's all about being gentle and kneading your voice out. And do you know what? That in itself is a form of warming up. What it does is it enables your voice to reach its potential. It doesn't artificially add notes to your range. Okay? So in many ways, increasing my range is teaching somebody, increasing someone's range is teaching them how to warm up properly so they can realize their potential. Okay? So that's how I would summarize range. It's a reframing. It's a different way of thinking about it. And in my opinion, a much healthier one.
I realise we don't have a huge amount of time left, but Tori, can I do my ooh warm up?
Go on then.
Explain it. So, stay-at-home choir members that have been in a session before, you will have definitely done this, but maybe not without as much explanation. I tend to call this the mackerel lips. It looks like this. Ooh, copy me, everyone in the room. Ooh, lovely. This just is a wide ooh vowel. Lots and lots of space here. What we're going to do is we're just going to explore the range, and this will just illustrate something. People often talk about registers of the voice. It's not something I like to talk about. I like to, I said earlier that the goal is consistency across the voice. If we have consistency across the voice, we shouldn't be able to detect, as the listener, multiple different registers in the voice. That's the ideal. Of course, there are different areas. There's the passaggio, there's the upper range, there's different types, there's the modal voice, falsetto, etc. But we want it to sound as consistent as possible as we work through our range. So to that ooh sound, starting nice and high. So those with changed voices, that's in your falsetto. Woo, woo, woo. Sopranos and altos, that's up in your upper range. And we're just going to slowly, to that ooh, go all the way through our range to the very bottom, to that ooh vowel. Now, a couple of things will happen. You'll notice they'll come to probably 2, maybe 3 points in your voice where it will feel like you can't quite continue with the same setup, and you have to change something in order to continue. I call those little road bumps. If you don't change something, you might get the little vocal crack called the yodel. That's fine. Embrace the yodel. You can quote me on that. Embrace the yodel. Now, there's 2 ways we can navigate around those points. Raising the soft palate, that's with a little smile, using these muscles here. £5 breath is going to help us with that. But let's just try it for now. You can go away and practice this one because this is really useful for going through the range. I'll try it. Go. Now you heard 2 points in my voice. One, my voice just stopped making a noise. One, there was a bit of crackling going on. That's because I haven't warmed up fully. And because in my upper range, I need to make sure I'm really super warmed up for it to work properly. If you can do that going through your entire range with no discernible change in tone as you move, and no sound of road bumps and lumps and changes, that's a really good indicator that you've set up the voice well. What do I mean by that? You've breathed well. You've breathed well. That's a really good little indicator. That's another one of my absolute favorites for checking the range. What have we got next, Tori?
Tuning, the immortal question of tuning, Jamie.
Indeed. Indeed.
So, yeah, I have another image which I'd like to offer to you. And that is that if you were learning yoga, you wouldn't expect to be able to do the crazy shapes that the teacher can do straight away. Everybody understands with yoga that it is a physical practice that you have to build because they can see it. Singing is exactly the same. It's like a mini yoga inside your throat. But just when you're thinking about improving your singing practice and what you're expecting in terms of results, maybe compare it. If you have any experience of yoga, compare it to yoga. Think, how long would it take me to see results at my age, in my, with whatever, physical condition you have, how long would it take me to see results? And cut yourself the same amount of slack for learning your singing practice and developing your singing practice. How often you'd need to do it, how long you can do it for before you want to take a break. All of these things apply. Just ask yourself those questions. And same thing again, replay this session. Replay it if we've just flung a load of information at you in an hour. You wouldn't be able to learn yoga in an hour. Go back, replay the session, draw out the most important lessons for you and really take them to heart and practice them. The eternal question of tuning. We've seen a few questions come in on the Google form about how do I keep in tune? And guess what, guys? An element of tuning is breath and tension, or lack thereof, and physical posture. All of the things which we started in our foundational warm-up, we started to set up those things healthily and well. Those will provide an incremental benefit to your singing, and therefore your tuning is a part of your singing. That's one thing. The other thing about tuning is that people feel like somehow it's entirely a physical thing. And it's not. At the end of the day, equal temperament tuning, which a piano is tuned to and which we hear in sort of Western music all over the world, is based on an invented set of intervals which have been sort of knocked into shape by humans over generations. If you'd like to know more about tuning, we should definitely look at releasing Blake's session on tuning from the Voces 8 project. Yes. But there's an element of tuning which is mental. Okay, it can be helped by giving yourself a good instrument to work with. But think about this: if you are, and I said this analogy to Jamie earlier on, and he wasn't very impressed with it. So I'm going to try it on you guys and see if I get a better response. Have you ever heard of the man in the desert who is trying to find his way, and he thinks, I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other, and then I must be going in a straight line. And he ends up going around in circles because any tiny, tiny changes he makes are magnified by the fact that he's got nothing else to rely on around him. So he ends up going around in circles. It's the same, it's the same with singing. If you're looking just at the notes you're singing and you're not taking into account any of the context of the music around you, if you are blind to that, or you have no landmarks to look for, You cannot guarantee you're going to stay in tune because you're only depending on yourself. Okay, you're going to end up veering off in one direction or the other, but it's almost impossible to go in a straight line or to be in tune. So tuning is so dependent on something which Jamie mentioned earlier on, which is awareness. Being aware of how you fit into the overall sound and constantly using that feedback to say, am I on the right track? Am I on the right track? Am I on the right track? You know, you are trying to walk down a boulevard lined with trees rather than pick out a straight line in the middle of a desert. Because you can look at, what are the sopranos doing? What are the altos doing? Can I hear the bass line? And those kind of landmarks are the kind of things that are going to help you stay in tune. Now, that's really hard to do if you're sight reading, because as everybody knows, sight reading takes up quite a lot of your brain, and you don't have a lot of brain left to look at the scenery. And that's why your tuning improves the better you know a piece of music, because you literally have more time to look around and smell the roses. So again, weirdly, tuning is going to be impacted positively by how well you know the piece, purely because it will give you more brain space to use all of the information that you get from the rest of the piece of music to help keep you on the right track. That's my advice for tuning.
Which brings me to age and the voice as we get older. I think there's two things I'd like to touch on with this. One of which is the vocal health side, before we get to how we can deal with the voice as it evolves over time. Now, vocal health is something we know to drink water. We don't always know when to drink water or how much water to drink. That will change for everybody. Pauline, great. You've seen me sipping on my bottle throughout the whole of this. Right now, the water that we're drinking will have no effect other than psychological. And there is a benefit to the psychological side. Singing is quite often referred to as 80 or 90% psychological and 10 or 20% physical. And the rest is the sort of technical side. Keeping the voice healthy, making sure that we're not singing if we've hurt our voice, if we've lost our voice because we've been talking, teachers in particular. If you spend lots of your time talking to a rowdy class, it's a lot of vocal load. Equally, if you don't use your voice very much, even an hour's singing session can feel like a long time to be using your voice. So making sure that we're not pushing our voice too hard. Any of you that are particularly active and might want to go to the gym once lockdown is over, those of you that are in the UK, it is now legal. Just be careful, please. You won't expect to go back to the gym and be able to lift or run as far or as fast as you did when you were competing at school, for instance. That changes over the course of your life, and you have to be aware of what your current ability is and slowly build upon it. I love that metaphor or that image of the pizza dough. I think that's a really great way to put it. Don't push too fast. I know a couple of you have asked about, what about when we go back to singing in real life and I'm going to lose my voice because I'm so excited? Don't over-sing. It's easier said than done, but be aware of where your voice is right now. And if you do 20 minutes of warm-up every single day, even if you're not in a rehearsal or you're not singing, it is going to provide you that benefit. So there's the vocal health side. Look after your voice. It is the same as your body. You try and eat healthily to look after your body. Sometimes easier said than done when there's, I eat a lot of pizza because I make a lot of pizza. Make sure you're drinking. Make sure you're drinking lots and lots of water. It takes 3 hours for water to get to your vocal folds and to hydrate them. So if they are in the best possible shape they can be, what about when my voice gets older? It changes, like our bodies, like our metabolism, like everything. It will change over time. In your vocal apparatus, you have 3 main pieces of cartilage. You have your thyroid cartilage, your cricoid cartilage, and your arytenoid cartilage. As the voice gets older, there's a process, and I won't touch on this too much because there's a fabulous session we did with Ginevra Williams, who spoke about this in far more detail than I could ever hope to. She has a fabulous book. She's a brilliant researcher. But the process of calcification is that cartilage firms up over time, which gives us less vocal flexibility. So we can't do as much when we're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 and plus as we could when we're young singers and we have lots of vocal flexibility. So be mindful. If you're trying to do coloratura and really fast, difficult things, you're going to have to practice it more to build in as much flexibility as your vocal apparatus can give you. But you are going to need to compensate in certain ways. Lots of people say, oh, when I hit X age, my metabolism changed. It's exactly the same with the voice. It's learning your voice, learning how it responds to certain things, what you can do, what you can't do, what maybe you could do with some practice. So really go easy on yourself, but building things up, you can really, really begin to learn more and more. And it comes back to that word that I said earlier, hyper awareness. Ruth has just asked if we can point to Jennifer's session. I'm sure we can get that up publicly on YouTube. Those of you that haven't gone to our YouTube, I'm going to remind you of that red subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button. Then you'll get a little notification, or you'll see us come up if you ever visit YouTube. I think, Tori, we've covered what we were going to cover. I realize we've not got long left, but please use this opportunity. Those of you on YouTube, I've got the chat open now.
And I'm in this.
If you'd like to submit any questions, we can answer a couple of questions before we finish. This will be available afterwards, so please don't worry.
Yeah.
Give us.
I just want to remind you of that yoga analogy. You know, that you see the article in the newspaper of the lady who took up yoga at the age of 80 and can now bend herself double. It's absolutely possible, but that lady probably did a lot of building of her practice over years, you know, and it's exactly the same for singing. So just, if in doubt, refer it back to something physical that you can see and see, you know, how realistic this is and what kind of time scale you think you'd be looking at. Great. Go on, pop those questions in the chat. Jamie, have you got any through YouTube?
I am looking. I've seen a good one from Michael about my voice sometimes cracks. What can I do to stop this? Do you want to take this, Tori, or shall I?
I would refer you straight back to Jamie's ooh exercise, which is, again, starting really well. Jamie goes all the way from the top of his range right down to the bottom. I would start in the middle, widen out gradually, and then I would do downwards falling oohs. Ooh, ooh, starting above the problem area, working your way, kneading the pizza dough down over the problem area. And, you know, if you feel like something, think about how it feels. If it feels tense, have a little physical shake, have a little bit of a brr or a tongue stretch, which I really like, which is putting your tip of your tongue. Jamie is going to demonstrate. My glamorous assistant will demonstrate the tip of his tongue behind his top teeth and then stretching the tongue forwards. Thank you very much. That is a great tongue stretch. If you feel like you need to reset, also that is my top tip for something I've just seen in the chat, which is, if I've done 10 bad takes, is it better to come back to it another day? If you're feeling sad, yes. If you're feeling super motivated, try having a physical shake and a tongue stretch, and maybe a little bit of glottal fry, which is because what that does is it resets your larynx in a nice low position. So tongue stretch, physical shake, glottal fry is as close as you can get to the vocal equivalent of turning it off and on again. And then if you're feeling motivated, if you're not feeling motivated, if you're fed up and you're about to throw your laptop on the floor, come back to it another day.
And please don't throw your laptop on the floor.
Please don't throw your laptop on the floor.
I'm going to answer 2 questions in very, very quick succession. Why does my lowest note vary from hour and hour and day to day? During the night, I imagine most of you lie horizontal or close enough to horizontal, unless you are a bat. When you do so, the blood pulls in your vocal folds, making them thicker. They're engorged with blood. So when you wake up in the morning, they will not vibrate as fast as they will when you've been standing all day and they've drained of blood, therefore are slightly lighter and more flexible. You'll be able to sing higher towards the end of the day than you will right at the beginning of the day. That will also change depending on how vocally warm or cold you may be. So 2 answers, but primarily that's why you can sing lower in the morning, and that's why it changes. Is there such a thing as warming down? I've seen a couple of comments from teachers who you spend all day talking. There is absolutely such a thing as warming down. That's why you see athletes doing exactly the same. Look, we're athletes, everyone. My favorite one, just copy me. You're going to puff out your cheeks and stick out your tongue, and you're going to hum throughout your entire middle range. That's it. It is my favorite exercise. It is like a massage for your vocal folds. The reason you puff out your cheek, this is quite difficult. You may need to have a bit of practice. But what this does, it is a semi-occluded vocal tract exercise because you're occluding, you're stopping the air coming out fully. But it will also mean that you're not introducing any tongue tension or facial tension or jaw tension. So it's a really good exercise, that one. And to top it off, you look brilliant when you do it. I did this around London once and got some very weird looks on the street. Anyway, any more questions, Tori, as rapid fire?
Oh, sorry, I may not have come through there. I just noticed as I did that I was holding some tension in my lips, and I got very much told off for it by myself because, of course, it turns into a raspberry if you do that. So there you go. I'm going to see how many quick fire things I can do. Margaret says, I hate an initial L as in locus. I would spend some time going, oh, la, 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 la. Because what that does is it sets you up with the right, nice, open facial posture and a good vowel sound. So if you go, oh, la, 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 you get used to separating the tongue movement from the jaw movement. If you, let's see, I'm going to do some negative practice and then I'll do positive practice. Can you try and say locus using both your jaw and your tongue to say the L? 3, 2, 1, locus. Yeah, okay. Now if you go, oh, la, 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 take the jaw out of the equation. 3, 2, 1, oh, la, 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 la. Nice. Now we're going to add a siren. Oh, la, 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 la. See if you can stop the jaw from getting involved. Ready? Add. Oh, la, 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 la. Cool. Some of you may have found that easy. Some of you may have found that the jaw really wants to join in the party. My advice to you, Margaret, would be to do an exercise until your tongue can move independently of your jaw. And then you can go locus, and you can start that word just using your tongue to go bloop for the locusiste. Okay, there we go. That's my quick fire. I think we've probably got time for a couple more, and then we'll
lost my quick fire, and it was such a good one. It was about, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who it was, but it was about how do I make my breath less loud, or how do I make my breaths quieter? A good choral breath should be completely silent. You should be able to stand as a conductor in front of a choir of 1,000 people, and that's kind of what we're doing, Tori and I. You should be able to stand in front of a choir of 1,000 people, and if they all breathe technically perfectly, I know that's a big ask, but if they all breathe perfectly, it should be completely silent. Now, this is exactly why I use, and I always come back to, I keep trying to reinvent it, and I always come back to the 5-pound breath. You could call it the I've seen a friend across the road breath, but for me, it's I've seen 5 pounds on the floor, and I know I'm going to buy myself a big piece of cake on the way home. That will just about afford a piece of cake in London as well. And it looks like this. So, okay, if you're really close to a microphone, you'll hear something, but it's not. Now, the noise comes from tension here. That's what makes you sound like Darth Vader. If you've relaxed these muscles, you might want to give yourself a little massage here, but a good breath. The only noise you'll get is the air rushing past your lips. That's it. But a good breath should be silent. So practice that breath as if you found something. There's a little bit of a smile. Your soft palate will raise, and it should be completely silent. Smiling when you sing is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to finish the session by saying that I've been scrolling down the questions. There are so many questions, we can't deal with them all. However, about 80% of the questions I've seen are referring to something that's to do with stamina, range, or breath. For all of those, I would encourage you to go and re-watch the session, go back over the bits where we're talking about stamina, range, breath, and try applying some of those techniques that we did in our foundational warm-up right at the beginning and see if that makes your particular issue any easier. Everything to do with struggling on top notes, finding it hard to breathe, loud breaths, struggling to top up breaths right at the top. Have a little look back over this session and see if you can pick up some tidbits from the sort of catch-all segments that we did earlier on. And of course, if you've got any further questions or you've got anything that's really burning that you really want an answer to, we are always here to help. And Jamie, is this a nice chance for you to use your fancy little OBS thingy?
Yeah. Look, I've been playing with tech all day. You all know me as the geek. If you'd like to get in touch, you can go to contact@stayathomechoir. You can send us an email to contact@stayathomechoir or head to the website www.stayathomechoir.com, but you probably all know that one by now. Do send us an email. We are here to answer as many questions as we possibly can. There are not quite enough hours in the day every now and then, but do send us any questions you might have. Those of you on YouTube, go on, hit that subscribe button for us. I've always wanted to be a YouTuber. So go on, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get notified when we release new videos. We will be answering as many vocal technique questions like this as possible. We love these kinds of sessions and we hope they're helpful for you. Equally, if you have any feedback or anything, please do email us as well. It is lovely to see you all. Is there anything we need to wrap up with, Tori? Anything from you?
You're all great. Thanks for coming. See you again.
Great to see you all. See you soon, everyone. Goodbye.